I didn't want to start the hot take with a hyperbolic, but we're all going to die. And that's because Dr. Monarez has just told us that in her testimony before the House Oversight Committee related to her being fired from the Center for Disease Control by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., that dangerous, incompetent, non-scientist, non-doctor, anti-vax, anti-science, science denier, failed environmental lawyer at best who runs our public health program. And she testified that the reason that she quit and or was fired after 3 weeks on the job at the Center of Disease Control is that RFK Jr. wanted her to rubber stamp the vaccine policy recommendations without looking at the science. She wasn't doing that. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about also how Donald Trump didn't like the reporting around Dr. Monarez as being fired and testifying. So he filed a phony suit against the New York Times. What else? We cover it on Legal AF, the podcast, and here's a clip. So that leads us right into our Dr. Monarez, who is a hero. She was the CDC director for 3 weeks until she was, as she testified today, she was ordered by RFK Jr. to rubber stamp whatever the vaccine board came up with in terms of their recommendations, which was filled with anti-vaxxers, and not look at the science behind any of the recommendations, and to fire anyone who was pro-vaccine that worked at the CDC. And she said, I will not do either of those two things. And he fired her, or she quit. But then there you are. But then she testified, as we knew she would. And she's effectively told the American people that RFK Jr. should be, if not impeached, he should be indicted, that hundreds of thousands of people are going to ultimately die in America because of a perverse healthcare policy that doesn't keep Americans safe and undermines public health, just the way the Republicans and MAGA undermine public safety. Same thing. In public health, she said, for instance, I'll give you a great example. She said, we are not ready as a nation for the next pandemic and the next epidemic and the next virus that kills people, or the next flu season. She's, only if you trade in magical thinking do you think that another COVID out of a lab or out of a jungle or a wet market isn't on its way here. Because it is. And it will come faster than others. I mean, whether you called it SARS or Ebola or Legionnaire's disease or MERS or fill in the blank, we are ravaged as a human people on planet Earth with things that can kill us that are communicable. And she said point blank in the hearing today, we are not ready for the next pandemic, and we won't be. And we are far behind because of this group of jokers that RFK Jr. has brought in. I mean, the new head of the CDC acting, he's a venture capitalist. Doesn't have any science background. He's Peter Thiel's buddy. He's J.D. Vance's buddy. What is he doing heading the CDC? He's not running a McDonald's franchise or whatever it is. So she said, we're not ready. And we're not ready to make the next vaccine to stop the next pandemic or to stop Americans from being killed. Not when almost $1 billion worth of grants was killed by RFK Jr. doing his part for Doge. And he killed all of the vaccine production capabilities that were used in the warp drive operation that Donald Trump continues to brag about. The only thing I think he did well during COVID. We're not going to be able to have another Operation Warp Drive because he killed all the funding related to it. And she said, as an example of that, we have our biggest measles outbreak in 30 years. Measles. What's next? Smallpox? Rubella? How about polio? We're bringing all the old-timey diseases back, everybody. Did you miss them? Because they're coming back. I never worried until RFK Jr. got in about my young daughter and her contracting one of these rare diseases that had all but been eliminated because of vaccines and an adherence to science. I never saw the day that Donald Trump would actually, I thought it was a joke, that he would actually let RFK Jr. run wild over public health. And I think Dr. Monarez finally, once and for all, everybody can go rip those bumper stickers that I see in my neighborhood of MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. This is magical thinking of the first order. That I'll just sell you some magic beans in exchange for the cow, because you think you're going to be Jack the Beanstalk. Come on. And I'm hoping that the doctors and the scientists that are inside of Congress, and there are a number of them that provide oversight over this committee, are going to use Dr. Monarez's testimony as the final straw that broke the camel's back to get rid of RFK Jr. and put in a doctor, an immunologist, a virologist. I'll take a dermatologist at this point to replace that. It's hard to believe we once had Dr. Fauci, keeping America safe. And I had the pleasure, speaking of Dr. Fauci, I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Fauci in college, when I was in college, when I was a resident advisor, and we had a big conference about AIDS because I went to college in the 80s. I went to college from 84 to 88 in Manhattan. And so we brought in this guy who nobody knew because, no internet, Dr. Anthony Fauci, who was the leading expert at the time on AIDS. And I got to talk. I followed his career. I was like a fanboy geek for Fauci after the time I met him. The speech was amazing. I still think about it. Meeting him, little tiny guy with a nice handshake, in the hall afterwards. We don't have Dr. Fauci's. We don't have Dr. Monarez. She's not the only one. Four other leaders of the CDC walked out with her. And now they're telling us what we suspected, which is we are unsafe and unwell as a nation because of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who was a failed environmental, where I get the European from, a failed environmental lawyer living off the Kennedy fortune. He's the shittiest of the Kennedys. I mean, really, of all the Kennedys that Trump could have put in office, this is the one that he put in, and every one of his family members is against him and has said he's going to get Americans killed. I said hundreds of thousands of Americans are going to die over the 4-year period, more than they would have because of these failed policies. And we're going to have to continue to follow it. This isn't the last we've heard of Dr. Monarez. This is not the last we've heard about RFK Jr. And to step on all of this bad news cycle, because RFK Jr.'s debacle started when he was cross-examined during his hearings a week or two ago. Epstein, FBI, Department of Justice. I mean, there's very few competent people, if any. Welcome back. 5 years in the making. Every Wednesday and Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. The podcast is called Legal AF for a reason. And if you didn't know why, now you do. It's Wednesdays, Karen and me. Saturdays, Ben and me. And then I do about 40 videos at the intersection of law and politics every week. Join our Legal AF YouTube channel. You're already here. Tell your friends about the Legal AF podcast and help them join. Join our Legal AF Substack. Now you're a full-fledged member of the Legal AF community. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. I'm Michael Popok, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event, by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok Firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok Firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.